I first saw her at the laundromat across the street from my building. It wasn't the kind of place people usually lingered in. The light was too bright, the chairs too hard, the air carrying that sharp mix of detergent and coin metal. But she sat there like she didn't mind any of it, cross-legged with a paperback propped against a folded towel. I noticed her because she didn't look like the others. No restless scrolling through a phone. No sighs about how long the dryer was taking. Just still. A woman in her mid-40s, maybe older, hair tied up like she'd done it in a hurry and forgotten about it. When I passed her row to get to the change machine, she glanced up. Not a long stare, just enough to register me. Enough that I felt it. I don't usually talk to strangers, especially not women twice my age. But when the quarter jammed in the slot, she closed her book, stood, and gave the machine a sharp tap with the heel of her hand. It whirred, coins spilling into the tray. "Old trick," she said. Her voice was calm, not trying to be warm. "Thanks," I muttered, scooping up the quarters. I tried not to look directly at her hands, but I did. Small scar near the thumb. Neat, short nails. Hands that looked like they'd done more than type on a keyboard. After that, it became routine. We weren't friends, but we kept ending up there around the same times. Wednesday nights, usually. I'd come with a basket slung awkwardly on my hip, she with everything already sorted into tidy bags. She noticed I never used fabric softener. I noticed she always brought a thermos, but never drank more than a few sips. "Dryer 3 runs hot," she told me once. "Don't trust the light when it says it's done." Another time, when I overloaded the washer, she shook her head, the corner of her mouth twitching. Not quite a smile, more like she was humored against her will. I started looking forward to those nights. My phone stayed silent in my pocket. No messages waiting, no one asking where I was. Just the low hum of machines and the faint sound of her page turning. It wasn't attraction, not at first. Or maybe it was, but so faint I didn't let myself name it. What I did feel was the strangeness of being noticed, even in passing. One night, my dryer broke mid-cycle. I stood there, holding a damp t-shirt, not sure if I should just leave. She set her book down and gestured toward her machine. "Throw it in with mine. Plenty of room." I hesitated. "Are you sure?" "It's just clothes," she said, already opening the door. I added my things. For the next 20 minutes, our lives spun together in that stainless steel drum. I kept folding and refolding the same napkin in my lap, eyes flicking toward her hands resting on her book. She didn't look back, but I could tell she knew I was watching. When her load finished, she packed up quickly. I expected her to nod and leave, like always. Instead, as she slung her bag over her shoulder, she paused. "You're in 3C, right?" I blinked. "Yeah." She nodded once, almost to herself. Then, "If your machine's still busted, knock tomorrow. I've got one at home." Before I could answer, she was already at the door. The dryer ticked as it cooled, metal contracting. I sat there with half-dry clothes and a strange thought repeating in my head. She knew where I lived. And maybe she'd been paying more attention than I realized. The next evening, I almost didn't knock. I told myself the busted dryer could wait, that I'd figure it out eventually. But the quiet of my apartment pressed in harder than usual, the empty sink, the unsent text drafts sitting in my phone. At 7:30, I found myself across the hall, knuckles hovering over her door. She opened before I knocked twice, like she'd been expecting it. "Clothes?" she asked. I nodded, lifting the basket as proof. Her apartment was tidy, not staged, just lived in. A framed photo sat face down on the shelf. I noticed because it was the only one. She gestured toward a compact washer tucked into the corner of her kitchen. "Go ahead," she said. I loaded the clothes, too aware of how domestic it felt. Like stepping into a life I had no claim to. She filled the kettle while I fussed with buttons. "Tea?" I said yes, though I never drank tea. We sat at the small table, steam curling between us. She held her mug in both hands, not drinking, just letting the warmth soak into her fingers. I caught myself watching again, the way I had at the laundromat, tracing details that weren't mine to trace. "Out of nowhere," she said, I used to come home to a pile of laundry like yours. Baseball uniforms, gym clothes, it never ended. Kids? I asked before I thought better. Her eyes flicked to me, then away. One. He's in grad school now. There was a pause, long enough for me to sense the weight of what wasn't being said. I nodded, pretending to sip my tea. The thought snagged at me. If her son was my age, or close, then what did that make me sitting here? Some blurred line I hadn't realized I was stepping over. You live alone? She asked. Yeah, just moved out of my parents' place, actually. Something shifted in her expression, not pity, exactly, but recognition. Like she understood the hollow echo of an empty apartment. The washer buzzed. Neither of us moved. The sound faded, leaving the room too quiet again. She broke it by saying, "You're careful when you fold things." I glanced at my hands, realizing I had folded the same t-shirt twice without noticing. Just habit, I guess. Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. Not many 20-somethings I've met bother with habits. The air between us thickened. I wanted to say something about how I wasn't like most people my age, or how I'd noticed the scar on her hand, or how her silences felt less empty than my own. But I didn't. Instead, when I reached for my mug, my fingers brushed hers. Barely a touch. She didn't pull away. It meant nothing. It meant everything. Later, walking back to my apartment with warm clothes pressed to my chest, I tried to shake it off. But one thought kept circling, restless and unmoored. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next week, I didn't see her at the laundromat. Wednesday came and went, then Saturday. I tried not to notice, but my basket filled quicker than usual. By Monday, I gave in and knocked on her door again. She opened slower this time, a cardigan wrapped tight around her. Machine still broken? Yeah. I lied, though I'd fixed it 2 days ago. She stepped aside anyway. The kettle was already on. This time, I noticed her fridge, magnets from places far away. Paris, Lisbon, Kyoto. Each one holding up nothing but blank scraps of paper. No photos, no lists. Just placeholders. You travel a lot? I asked. Used to. She didn't elaborate. The washer hummed. We sat in silence, the kind that wasn't exactly uncomfortable, but wasn't easy either. I wanted to say something light, something harmless, but the words stuck. She seemed farther away than last time, even sitting right across from me. When the kettle clicked off, I stood to pour the tea. She reached at the same time, our hands colliding against the handle. Sorry, I murmured. Her laugh was short, almost sharp. You really should stop apologizing for existing. I froze. She softened. I didn't mean it like, no, I get it, I said too quickly. But her words stayed with me, lodged somewhere I couldn't shake. We sat back down, mugs steaming between us. Her eyes lingered on me longer this time, like she was weighing something she wasn't ready to say. Then came the knock. Sharp, unexpected. She flinched, almost spilling her tea. I looked at her, waiting, but she stayed still. Finally, she set her mug down and crossed to the door. A man's voice drifted in, casual, familiar. Forgot the charger I lent you. She handed it over quickly, her tone brisk. When she closed the door, she kept her back against it for a second longer than necessary. Friend? I asked. She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. The hum of the washer felt louder than before. I stared at the swirl of clothes, pretending not to think about the unease tightening in my chest. Maybe I wasn't the only one she let in. Maybe this whole thing was just nothing. When she finally sat back down, her hand brushed the table, restless. She didn't touch her tea. Sometimes I wonder why I let anyone in here, she said quietly. It complicates things. I swallowed. Like me. Her eyes flicked up, quick, startled, then softened. Maybe especially you. Silence. A long one. I leaned forward without meaning to, like something in me wanted to bridge the space. Her breath caught. She didn't move away. For a second. Just one. The room tilted toward something irreversible. Then the washer buzzed, loud and insistent. We both startled, chairs scraping against the floor. I busied myself pulling clothes into the basket, heart unsteady, face hot. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew. If that machine hadn't interrupted, we might not have stopped. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Late autumn, the air just sharp enough to see your breath. I spotted her outside, sitting on the low bench near the corner store, a paper bag at her feet. She looked smaller there, without the walls of her apartment, without the buffer of the laundromat hum. I almost walked past, but she lifted her head, and it felt too late to pretend I hadn't seen her. "Hey," I said. "Hey." She nudged the bag with her foot. Grapefruits were on sale. I bought too many. I sat beside her. The bench was cold, our coats brushing once, then separating again. We didn't talk for a while. Cars slid by. A kid dropped his ice cream cone and cried until his mother bent down to replace it. Ordinary noises. Ordinary scenes. But between us, it felt like the world had thinned. She broke it first. "That man who came by the other night. You looked at me differently after." I hesitated. "I just didn't know you have a life?" Her voice was dry, almost amused. "That's not what I meant." She didn't press, but her eyes stayed on me, steady, waiting. I found myself saying, "I don't really have anyone checking in on me. Not anymore. So I guess I notice when you let people in." Her expression flickered. For a moment, I thought she'd brush it off. Instead, she said softly, "I don't let people in. Not really." Something cracked in her voice there, small but undeniable. The silence that followed was heavier than words. I thought about her son, the framed photo turned face down, the magnets with no stories attached. About the scar near her thumb, the scar I'd never asked about. "I don't know why I keep answering your knocks," she said finally, eyes on her hands. "You're too young. It shouldn't feel." She cut herself off. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to steady my breath. "Then why does it?" Her head turned slowly. I could see it in her eyes, the fight, the pull, the guilt, all tangled in one. "You remind me what it feels like to be seen," she whispered. The words hit harder than anything else she could have said. I wanted to reach for her hand, to close that inch between us, to say something that made sense of it. Instead, I sat frozen, heart hammering, as she pressed her palms flat against her thighs, as if holding herself back. A breeze cut through. A grapefruit rolled from the bag, bumping my shoe. She let out a short laugh, shaky, almost embarrassed. "God," she murmured, eyes on the fruit, not me. "What are we doing?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The question hung there, bare and unfinished, settling into the space between us. And neither of us moved. The next few days, I didn't see her. Not at the laundromat, not on the bench, not even through the thin crack under her door where the light usually spilled late into the night. I told myself it didn't matter. I still had clean clothes. I still had tea bags going stale in my cupboard. Life went on, but my evenings stretched hollow. My phone sat on the counter, screen lighting up only with news alerts and spam calls. I drafted a message, "Everything okay?" and deleted it before the first word fully formed. On Thursday, I passed her in the hallway. She was dressed to go out, coat buttoned high, earrings catching the dim light. She nodded at me, polite, nothing more. Like a neighbor, just a neighbor. "You heading somewhere?" I asked, voice lighter than I felt. "Dinner." One word. No detail. No pause. I stepped aside, let her brush past. The faint scent of her perfume clung to the air after she left, lingering longer than she did. That night, I folded laundry I didn't need to do. I waited for the buzz of her return. When it came, hours later, I stayed still, listening through the wall to the muffled sound of her moving about, her cupboard doors opening and closing. No knock. No kettle. By Saturday, I gave up waiting and knocked myself. Once. Twice. She opened, tired. Hair loose, eyes shadowed. "Sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure for what. She shook her head. "You don't need to apologize. I've been thinking." The word felt heavier than it should have. She leaned against the frame, not inviting me in. "My son, he's coming home next week. Just for a bit." He wouldn't understand. I nodded, even though something inside me bristled. Of course. Yeah. It's not you, she added quickly, almost too quickly. But it was me. Or it felt like it. We stood there, awkward, until she gave a small, tired smile and said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" Then closed the door with a finality I hadn't heard before. Back in my apartment, I sat staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over her name. A contact saved months ago when she'd given me her number in case the machine breaks again. I typed, "Do you want me to stay away?" I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I erased them, letter by letter, until nothing remained. The apartment was too quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The basket of laundry sat untouched in the corner. I couldn't bring myself to start it. And across the hall, the light under her door stayed dark. It was late, later than I'd ever dared knock before. Past 11. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's reheated leftovers, and every sound felt louder than it should. Her door opened slower this time. She wore a worn sweatshirt, no earrings, hair pulled back carelessly. For a moment, she just looked at me, unreadable. "I shouldn't have come," I said. "But you did." Her voice was even, not sharp, not warm, just tired. I nodded, not moving. I don't want to keep guessing where I stand." Her hand lingered on the doorframe. She didn't step aside, but she didn't close it either. The space between us felt thin, like one wrong word could tear it. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "You're too young." "I'm too." She stopped, searching. "I've already lived the part you're just starting. It's not fair." I swallowed. "I don't care if it's fair. I care if it's real." Her eyes flickered, something unsteady flashing there. She looked past me, down the hall, as though checking if anyone was watching. Then back at me, softer now. "My son," she said quietly. "He wouldn't understand. He's your age." He'd think. She trailed off. I shifted, heart pounding. "So what do you think?" She let out a slow breath. "I think I've been waiting for someone to notice me again. And I hate that it's you. Because it feels good. And wrong. At the same time." Her honesty hit me harder than rejection would have. I nodded, my throat tight. "That's how it feels for me too." We stood like that, words drying up, the silence thick. I could hear the hum of her fridge, the faint tick of a clock somewhere inside. She rubbed her thumb over her scar, the small one I always noticed but never asked about. I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. Not yet. Finally, she sighed. "I don't have the energy for games. So if you knock again, if you come in again, it can't just be folding shirts and drinking tea. You understand that, don't you?" I met her eyes. "Yeah, I do." Her lips pressed together, not a smile, not a frown. She shifted, then slowly opened the door wider. Just enough. I stepped inside. The kettle was on the counter, clean and waiting, like it always was. She didn't go for it. She didn't offer tea. Instead, she touched my arm. Brief, steady, nothing dramatic. "Okay," she said. It was barely more than a whisper. But it was the first word that felt like an answer. Winter shifted to spring before either of us said the word together. Not in the way people usually meant it. There were no announcements, no pictures sent to friends, no milestones marked on calendars. Just small, repeated choices. Knocks answered, mugs filled, doors left open instead of closed. Our lives overlapped slowly, almost by accident. I started keeping extra tea bags in my cupboard. She began leaving her door unlocked if she knew I was coming. We never talked about it. We just adjusted. Some nights, we sat at her kitchen table the way we always had. The kettle steamed between us, untouched until it went cold. Other nights, we walked, not far, just around the block, sometimes ending on the same bench near the corner store. She'd carry a bag of groceries, usually too many grapefruits, and I'd take one from her without asking. It became a kind of ritual. There were moments of distance still. Days where she kept her door closed, lights off early. Times I wondered if she regretted letting me in. But those pauses always ended, eventually. And when they did, it felt like choosing again, not slipping back by default. I noticed the framed photo had turned face up one evening. Her son, taller than me, smiling in some sunlit backyard. She caught me looking, and for the first time, didn't move to hide it. "He's doing well," she said quietly. "Better than I expected." I only nodded. It wasn't my place to ask more, and she seemed grateful for the silence. Over time, the guilt that used to hang between us thinned. Not gone, just softened, like fabric washed too many times. We both knew the world wouldn't quite understand. But inside those walls, it didn't feel like something to explain. It just was. One morning, I left her apartment at 8:47 a.m. The clock on her microwave burned into my mind. She stood at the doorway, hair loose, robe tied, mug in hand. She didn't say goodbye. I didn't either. But the way her eyes lingered, steady and unguarded, said more than either of us could have managed. Later that day, I passed her on the bench. She looked up, squinting against the sun, and I felt the weight of everything we hadn't said and everything we no longer needed to. I sat down beside her. She handed me half a grapefruit wrapped in a napkin. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The traffic moved, a bus hissed at the curb, and the world kept going. And I thought, not for the first time, maybe this was what it meant to be chosen, quietly, without ceremony. She glanced sideways, almost smiling, and said, "You fold your shirts better now." It was nothing. It was everything. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?